Dangers around abandoned and active mines. Yes, that might alarm some people. That might come across as negative. Let's start with a pretty familiar story, at least to most. So Romeo and Juliet fall in love. Their families don't like each other. Sad. Romeo kills Juliet's cousin because of a side beef, and Romeo is banished. Also sad. Juliet fakes her own death to get out of an arranged marriage and reunite with Romeo. Romeo thought the death was real. You know what happens next. So in narrative storytelling, they often deal in fiction, Shakespearean or not Shakespearean. We are dealing with data. It's not fictitious or Elizabethan in any way. With data, narratives are about as non-fiction-y as you can get. So how could that maybe look different, applying a 3-act structure or an act structure of any kind, a narrative arc, to data? We don't have the luxury of inventing characters or a central tension, but we can adapt it. So what I'm about to show you again, or talk about, is not a universal method, but hopefully it paints a picture. So let's pretend like Shakespeare's version of Verona in Romeo and Juliet was cataloged into a table. That being every single thing that might, like a set decorator might need in order to produce Romeo and Juliet, which has actually been done for the screen, but let's say it was a data set. So in Act 1, for our purposes, a single object, a potion, sets off a chain of events that topples a dynasty and leads to the accidental death of 2 teenagers. Significant data point. But it is only one of thousands and thousands, maybe tens or hundreds of thousands, of objects that make up the scenes in Verona in Romeo and Juliet. There's the dagger, there's the ring, there's a flower bouquet, there's a tomb, there's lots of stuff. So data point, broader data set. Act 3 would be more like, now we can map the significance of these different points, where they are, who they're connected to, what other metadata will help us understand the underlying environment, not the psychologies of characters, but using the objects to add depth to this iconic story. Unfortunately, I don't have this data set. I really wanted to actually do something like this. But again, depends on the data, depends on the audience, depends on what you're doing. Thinking about things in a 3-act structure is useful. Let's mock this out with some different data, because again, I don't have Shakespearean catalogs, which is a shame. So we're gonna use GDELT's data set, 3.5 million books. Strangely, many of these books aren't really books. They're federal documents, so think acts of Congress and health studies, investigative reports. Act 1, we'll start with a single data point. This is Valerie. Everyone say hi to Valerie. Valerie, she wrote this in All Trails. First time Valerie had been on a real mountain bike ride. She's exhausted, but she did it. So Valerie speaks in the third person, and Josh thinks that's charming, but that's kind of besides the point. Where she is the point. She is in St. Helena Island in Michigan. Great. She's having a great time in this protected park in Michigan. But what Valerie does not realize is that 25 years earlier, Senate Energy Committee advanced an act that conserved 240 acres that allow people like Val to hike and bike and explore St. Helena. This is only one act that passed through the federal government within this giant database from 1995 to 2005. Included in this GDELT book data set is a measure of tone. So the tone, described as the percentage of all words in the article that were found to have a positive emotional connotation versus a negative one. It's a sentiment analysis, basically. So, for example, if we look at some of these negative ones here, this is from 2001. Pain is the first word of the name of it. Granted, sentiment analysis is going to be for the entirety of the document, so we're just looking at the title right now, but versus, our lovely Helena documentation is up here towards the top, along with a blueprint for your success. Sure. Transforming ideas for teaching and learning the arts. Beautiful. Okay, so positive and negative sounding things coming out of the US government, including this conservation effort in the year 2000, Act 2. So at a time when Senate committees are investigating philandering presidents, for those that don't know, Bill Clinton did some bad stuff, also terrorist threats and a number of other things, the Energy and Natural Resources Committee was conserving land. This has been overshadowed, of course, but from a tonal analysis standpoint, this is a very positive thing. All of the pink dots are this committee that are, among all of the negativity, saying, hey, we're going on a a sprint of conserving land during this time. That's great. So yeah, one of the few sources that lifts the overall tone, but what the government says isn't all darkness and death. There are some rainbows, so to speak. So why is it that a slightly tonally positive document passing through Congress is worth noting? Act 3. So this isn't a perfect description of how information flows in the United States, but the government reacts to constituents, the news reacts to the government, the constituents react to the news, and it repeats. We're all just kind of like in a cycle of reacting to each other. So the tonality, whether it's positive or negative, does in fact make a difference if the government is projecting positivity and negativity. It funnels fear or hope to its citizens. Now, as you can see, if we just like isolate the most positive and most negative, there's certainly more negative here. And that makes sense. Government isn't here to inject, sunshine and again, rainbows. But only some of this legislation and federal activity can create space to cope with some of the negativity inherent to American news, or in this case, American legislation. They're all related. And maybe in response to that negativity, they want to literally pursue sunshine and rainbows. They want to go outside and enjoy themselves. It can be challenging to measure which appropriations and initiatives and acts truly help or harm the American people. But we know that conservation, the positivity of it, and what it does for future generations can put smiles on faces, especially Valerie's. This is her exploring all the other parts of St. Helena Island. If any of you know Valerie, tell her I'm sorry. I picked her totally at random. Okay, one pro tip before we go on to our final principle here. Screenwriters use something called boards to organize their stories. Maybe you already know this, but if you don't, it's literally index cards and sticky notes, and they'll have rising actions, character development points, resolutions, whatever it may be. They'll put it up on a giant board or a digital whiteboard and organize it in order to like build the arc of the story. You can do the same thing, like by keeping sticky notes throughout your analysis, you can later organize them and start to get a sense for how this might turn into some kind of story arc.